Welcome to Creative in Tech, a podcast show powered by ReadSpeaker AI. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts, and I'm the brand evangelist for North America at ReadSpeaker. This show is all about highlighting the various brands and organizations that are creatively using one of the biggest growing spaces in technology, conversational AI. And in these next few conversations, we're speaking to people within the banking and financial industry and talking about how they're using this creative technology in an interesting way. So joining me today is Colleen Fahey. She is the U.S. Managing Director of Sixième, a sonic brand agency. And then I also have Sergio Trujillo. He is the lead of brand and creative strategy at USAA. Welcome. So excited to have both of you here.
Thank you, Carrie. It's my pleasure.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yes, I'm so excited. So when we had spoke, this was something that was a little bit different because when we think about sonic branding, it really enhances a brand and adds to kind of an audio space and potentially conversational AI. So I'd love for Colleen, you to just kind of give briefly an overview of what sonic branding is and why you're so passionate and excited about this space.
Well, sonic branding is something that is exactly like visual branding in that you want to have a brand that people recognize, that is distinctive, that's memorable, and that stands out. And in visuals, you do it with colors, typeface, logos. In sonic branding, you do it with sounds, and you do it with voice, music, and sound effects. And what you're trying to do is have a coherent and meaningful brand that you can perceive through your ears, which is incredibly important for the world of AI, where many of the interactions are only auditory. So your logo is not going to help you. Your colors are not going to help you. It has to be the way you sound in the world.
And why are you excited about this space? Because Colleen, you and I've met a few times, and I know you're so passionate about this. You got into it kind of later on, but can you talk about what it is that excites you about sonic branding?
Well, it's a wonderful way to make things meaningful and emotional. So when you are interacting, let's say, with a skill, an Alexa skill or something like that, if you just have a voice, it's just like somebody talking to you around the table. But if it starts with music and it has sound effects that make you feel like maybe the person's walking through the forest while he's talking to you or something like that, you can build a whole world in people's minds and in their imaginations and you can do it without bothering the words. It's just little subtle things that make people realize that this is coming to you not from Alexa, but from this brand, and this brand stands for something and can make you feel a certain way.
Yes, I love that. I am a dancer, so I'm all about adding this kind of artistic component to it. Sergio, for you, you are a creative person as well. What is it about kind of the branding and creative space that excites you, and especially within kind of this financial piece as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for someone that enjoys marketing and branding, I think this idea of sonic branding is somewhat of a new one, and in many ways still very untapped across many industries. I think if we look back, some of the strongest brands have historically had some sort of sonic element to it. So whether that is McDonald's, or in my previous life, I had a chance to work on Green Giant at General Mills, there are brands that really try to tap into all elements of the person, all elements of all senses, from a visual to a sonic element. So I think when our team began discussing this idea of an audio identity and sonic branding, it made sense for us.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, sonic branding has been around for a long time, and for kind of these financial or banking or investment opportunities, for them to be able to do it, it just adds a little bit to it. Can you talk a little bit about, Sergio, in general, first off, where the financial and banking industry is in terms of branding and just how they're kind of using newer technologies or new things like this to help them extend and enhance their brand?
Sure, absolutely. So for us, when our team at USAA conducted a deep dive of the categories that we play in combination with our friends here at Sixième, we looked at how many of the large players in banking as well as in insurance utilize sonic branding. And as you can imagine, from anyone from Allstate to State Farm to the many nationwide, there are, this space in particular was one that, number one, spends a lot of money. They have a unique audio component somehow, whether that be through music or whether that be through some sort of a jingle or even a familiar and consistent voiceover. So as we thought about our objectives at USAA of continuing to introduce the brand to new consumers and bring new members into the association, if our goal was to stand out through brand awareness and consideration, one component of that was being able to break through, number one, in the cluttered media environment, but also amongst this sea of competitors that, oh, by the way, are spending a lot more than us in marketing. So for us, it was a great tool to add to our toolbox. And I'm sure we'll speak about the process and the success our team has enjoyed because of this audio logo and sonic branding effort.
Yeah, before we kind of get into that, I want to share just the sonic brand that you came up with, and hopefully people are watching or listening can hear this. So again, this is coming through the live stream, and you can hear it through some of their commercials. And Sixième has a great setup on their website to listen as well. But this is the USAA sonic logo that Sixième created. Wonderful. All right, so I would love to hear a little bit about this kind of process. You talked about why you kind of started this. Can maybe, Sergio, you can start off with the brand. Who is USA as a brand? You've been around for a long time. And let me just say, as going through this show, I've met 3 or 4 other people that just spoke so highly of USAA. And so can you talk about the brand as a whole? And then Colleen, kind of talk a little bit about how you started to create this sonic brand for them.
Sure, absolutely. So for those that don't know about us, we are a Fortune 100 financial services company that serves the military community and their family. We were founded in 1922 by 25 officers that could not get insurance because of the risk inherent in their lives being the military. So from the very onset of USAA, almost 100 years ago, this idea of camaraderie was present, and togetherness. But despite our success, there's still a tremendous opportunity for us to continue to introduce the brand to new members. Clearly, if you're a veteran or you're actively serving, of USAA, and you likely have a very strong connection to the brand. I would venture to guess that many of us do not have a strong connection to our bank, or for sure not our insurance company. But because of our services and our products, and how we have continuously succeeded in serving our members through great service, we see that strong connection. And when you hear that someone has USAA or is employed at USAA, I think there's this bond that that you start to realize. So I believe I answered the first part of your question. Do you mind asking the second part?
Yeah, no, I'd love for actually Colleen to kind of take it here. So you talked about just the brand of USAA. And I think, Colleen, if you can talk about a little bit your process when someone comes to you and says, okay, we want this sonic brand. You want to be adding it to different things. You know, this brand has been around, like you said, since the 20s. Where do you start in being able to bring this through in an audio soundscape per se?
Okay, so I'll start with a general abstract, how we do a brand, and then I'll go specifically into how we did USAA. So we have a process that's very much like a visual branding agency, any brand agency. You know, we do competitive research to find out where the spaces in the market are to be distinctive. We do a brand audit. And then we move into doing mood boards. And the mood boards are built around values, the key core values of the brand. But of course, the mood boards aren't visual. You don't look at them, you listen to them. So they're like playlists about camaraderie, as for instance, Sergio mentioned, and other key values. So, and then you get all kinds of ideas from listening to these, what people think is too frenetic, what people think is too boring, too polished, too fancy, and start brushing aside those, and you do the core kind of ideas, musical ideas, ways that music can express words. And that gives you the brief that you can give to your creative team. Then the creative team takes that, each of them interprets it a little differently. And so then you get concepts, and the client approves, disapproves, then you refine, and then you go take the DNA that you've created and build a whole system around it. One of the system that we built for Sergio is we're very proud of is the call hold system, which has increased people's satisfaction with their experience. For instance, the commercials are doing great, but that one is very touching. So so that's how you do it. Can you do it? You want me to stop talking now and you can go off and start a sonic branding agency?
It is a lot. I think, you know, you just briefly kind of going through, but it really is this kind of mix of science and research and art and blending it all together to create kind of this final product.
But the interesting part,
No, I do want to add.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I do want to add, you know, a fun story as part of the early process.
Oh, yeah. I want to talk about.
Well, there are several, but the one that I always share is, you know, this project, I think, came together because our leadership team was seeking a way to give consistent feedback to our various agencies that were embedding music into our creative spots. Now, I think for most of us that have had a chance to work in creative production and advertising, et cetera, unfortunately, many times the music is not the star role. It's sometimes what they will turn to is, oh yeah, you know, in the last couple of weeks of production and post-production, and oh, you know, there's this bed we like, and then you're scrambling to put it together to put it on air. So we're trying to find a way to consistently give that feedback. So I think at the onset, it wasn't even really about a sonic identity. It was really about, let's just improve our music. And that was very early on in my tenure at USAA. And I vividly remember going downstairs and calling Colleen after finding her on the Google. And we had a conversation, you know, and that was 1 year before we even kicked off this project. And it was through that dialogue, through the discovery and understanding what sonic branding was and what it can mean for us in particular at USAA, which was super helpful.
And once we get to the process, it was clear that USAA wasn't going to be your typical client. First of all, it's so big that its building horizontally is bigger than the Sears Tower laying down. So it's in Texas, you know, it's huge. We got input from everyone and their brothers, including military affairs, including the leader of the band, that this company has its own band, and all kinds of advertising and communications, and just so many people. So trying to boil it down into what are we going to focus on, that was a gargantuan effort. And there were two key things that seemed to emerge. One was that USAA serves the military but isn't the military. And another was going back to many, many things that USAA stands for. The one that created the most emotional connection was camaraderie, unity, support for each other. So in the mood board process, we really explored that. And there was a moment in the mood board process where there was a call and response. We had put in a call and response, la, 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 rah, 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 like that. And suddenly the room erupted. It was full of excitement. People were telling about stories about group marches and cleaning the barracks, singing back and forth to each other, and how it made terrible jobs more fun, easier. And that came from the world of the military, but it wasn't exactly military. It's used in sports a lot. And it evoked so much good emotion. And that is why you hear in our tiny little logo, you hear a call, US, and a response, AA, from a group. And there are other kind of cues to the military. It has like a little snare drum and that kind of thing. But that was the big idea, was that call and response, the Jody call, the camaraderie expressed in this little tiny 3-second logo. But there were other things that were very special about USAA that were different. One of them is that, we're professionals. We do a pretty polished job on our audio. USA did not want polish. They kept saying, put more mud on those uniforms, get those boots dirtier. So even in our response, we used singers that weren't necessarily singers by profession, who kind of could hit the tune, but not like bing, like a professional soprano might or something. And so it became very approachable that way, or that's how we feel. So and then the approval process, my God, sorry, Sergio, but it was intense. There were so many groups that had to put their oar in to give opinions, to approve it, sort of pull it back, reapprove it, ask for changes, So it was a kind of long process for approvals, but Sergio and I pretty much linked arms.
Yep.
with other people, but we really marched that through kind of together. I see that I'm using military language now if I say march. It's funny.
No, I think, when I heard the Sonic brand and I was reading more about USAA, and how you were talking about, it represents the military, but it's not all military, and the camaraderie. I mean, I feel it, I get it. And then you start to see, how you're using it, through other means, through commercials, and where it fits. And it's beautifully done, and it makes sense. And I feel the brand, and it adds another layer to it. You were talking about kind of the more the IVR, if somebody calls in, and I think, Colleen, you were telling me earlier about, parents reporting deaths of young adults, and how do you kind of adjust this sound so it's still the brand, but it has maybe a different feel to it when somebody is calling maybe something that isn't so exciting, obviously.
No, it's very sad. So we did one piece of music for the on hold first, and that was a mistake. We needed to have we learned very quickly from comments from the audience, from the callers, that this was not appropriate to the way they were feeling when they were calling in. Because in the military, you lose young people, you lose your children sometimes. It's incredibly sad, but they have 100 people that are dedicated just to taking these calls, run by a man who actually has had the experience. And so those people guided us through, not to make it melancholy, but just to make it soothing and calm. And so we composed a piece that was exactly for that purpose. And it's really been good. It has really improved the experience. So,
Sergio, what has been the feedback either from people who work for USAA or the people that are calling in or interacting? What have you kind of heard overall from creating this Sonic brand and using it in different areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think I'll start with what the majority of people hear, and that is on the commercials. And it's loosely speaking, it served its purpose of really helping us with breakthrough and awareness. It has also allowed us to flex in and explore a new, not to change the brand personality, but to flex new muscles. If you think about our personality of being warm, genuine, authentic, and grounded, and such, we have always been very grounded and warm, but we've started to flex our muscles and being much more energetic to an audience, quite frankly, that is that way in their military life and their own personal life. So it's been great. You start to hear people chanting it, singing it. So I think it's done well both internally and externally through those metrics. From an on-hold environment, yes, our plan, what our team did work with the IVR team and those folks to update our the music on our on-hold system. It's worth noting that if you try to look for a USAA bank or branch, you're probably not going to find one. We are largely, we largely conduct the business, on the phone via an app, and that's because if you think about it, so many of our members are dispersed, being in the military. So we updated the on hold. I think as Colleen indicated, we got some quick voice of the member learning in partnership with our team, and found some areas to improve that. And it's, I think it was a great learning environment, the opportunity for us to identify there's a way for us to extend what you do for media into other channels, but potentially not directly extend it into there.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. Again, not just your clientele, but we are seeing a lot more people use mobile for banking and finances. We talk about, taking a picture of a check and depositing that way, and all these different things. For whatever you can share, do you see USAA kind of getting into conversational design at some point, and how could potentially the Sonic brand fit into that from your perspective, Sergio? And then I'd love to hear, Colleen, you kind of talk about where Sonic brand fits in conversational AI in general. So whatever you feel comfortable to share.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's worth noting that at the very onset of this project, our team conducted somewhat of a brainstorm with folks throughout the enterprise. So individuals that work directly with the phone system, teams that manage the ATM systems throughout the country, departments at USAA, which I didn't know exist. So it was great to get their their input, and identify where we could in the future infuse this Sonic identity. So absolutely, from an AI perspective, and I think as I've been at USAA and also done my outside research, I think broadly speaking, there's two ways I'm seeing the banking and insurance industry use AI. One is internally for operations. So for example, as you can imagine, we have many individuals that need to submit either a home claim or an auto claim, some sort of insurance claim. And there's teams at USAA that are constantly seeking to innovate in that space to improve the consumer experience. So from that perspective, yeah, there's absolutely a lot of AI. And then from a marketing and external facing, where there's ways for us to ultimately be able to reach the member, to reach the consumer where and when they are. And historically, that was probably via phone, but obviously although there's still a large amount of calls that come to USAA every year, there are other ways that our team can speak to them. That's through our mobile app, through chat bots, through other conversation, and there are teams that are actively working on identifying and building out that brand persona and finding a way to speak to them so it's consistent. And I think as they make that progress, they are absolutely going to find a way to utilize elements of our audio identity in that work.
Yeah, meet them where they are. That's definitely a branding and marketing thing we talk about. And as you get younger generations where they are using other devices, it's important to have that. Colleen, can you talk about again, where sonic branding or like what we do with custom voice or other things that really enhance an AI experience, which are really important for customer experience and brand recognition. Where does this kind of fit just in general? Can you just talk about it just as an overview?
Yes, in general, if you're going to be communicating with people using sound in any way, one thing to think about is the voice that you're using, and if that voice could be consistent and differentiating both, why not have the same voice reading your tagline in an advertisement as in your voice skill or your voice app? So it's the idea of trying to stay vocally consistent with the same persona or personality that goes across. And then the music has an amazing role in making you more understandable as a brand and making it clear that it's your brand that's talking to the consumer and not Google's brand or Amazon's brand. We've created for ourselves, Sixième, an app called Sonic Brand Answers. It's a voice skill. And as soon as we put the music in, people stopped asking the question, like, how do I get back to Amazon? Is this Siri? All those questions went away because people knew they were in a particular spot. And then the other part of sound effects is that you can create moods, visual, mental pictures, theater of the mind, all that kind of thing. So those are three important ways. You should really think about sound in a much broader way when you're devising or designing any vocal interaction.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's always about, again, the experience that you have. And as Sergio mentioned, where people are at, if they're on the website, there is going to be visual. If they're on their phone, if they're voice skill, they want an audio. You want to have all of those senses kind of touched as much as possible and keeping it on brand. Do either of you have kind of any final thoughts or maybe a tip in terms of either sonic branding or conversational AI, or any tips for maybe the banking financial industry in terms of how to kind of utilize new technology? Sergio, any thoughts or tips?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I think, I'm a strong believer in the collaborative approach. I think, as Colleen indicated, we did expand the reach and the team to, and at times it did, in full transparency, it may have slowed us down, but I think that allowed for that, for very valuable input into the process and to ensure that it was accepted into the organization. And I would say that, don't underestimate the power of music. I think we all in some shape or form love music, and we're very passionate about it. And it's really about finding those elements, those instruments, that sound, or the artist potentially that's going to represent your brand and advance what you want to stand for, what equities you want to stand for. And if you're clear on the objectives and what you want to stand for as a brand, I think it makes the process a lot more easy.
I agree. Colleen, any tips or thoughts here?
Yeah, I agree. Get ahead of the AI experience by addressing the brand first. And as USAA has done, really and find out how to describe your brand sonically. And then when it comes to the AI, you won't be just floating around in the world grabbing voices and scratch tracks and things like that.
No, it makes sense. Well, I thank you both so much. If people want to learn more about USAA, Sergio, where can they do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. Search my name, what you see at the bottom here in this corner maybe, and happy to discuss more.
And Colleen, where can people learn more about Sixième or connect with you?
You can find the case on the Sixième website, sixième.com. And if you need help speaking it, you can contact me, Colleen Fahey, on LinkedIn. I'm in Chicago,
Perfect.
if that helps you sort through the Colleen Faheys.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for coming on together. I think it's always great to kind of showcase, how an agency is helping a brand, to hear how it's working, and to kind of have both of you on here. So I thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. That was a great
And if
interview.
you
Thanks,
are,
Carrie.
yeah, you're welcome. If you are watching or listening, don't forget to subscribe to our ReadSpeaker AI YouTube channel to catch all the live videos, as well as our audio podcast, Creative in Tech, wherever you listen to podcasts.